The company was originally started in 2004 and incorporated in 2008. And on average, we've been growing about 30 to 35% a year. So we're expecting this growth to continue. We're investing all our profits back into the business in the CapEx. So we're buying new equipment, trucks, low beds, cranes and items like that. So it's basically helping the company to meet the client demands. Because as more companies are coming in, where the company's geared itself up to meet international standards. We recently got certified for ISO 9001. We're putting basically systems, infrastructure to help the company meet the demands of our clients. To invest in the market, you actually need a big CapEx budget. At present, there is no sort of financial structure in place to be able to gear up your existing sort of company and leverage the finance to be able to buy equipment. So for us, it's very difficult to keep on growing because we're having to reinvest a lot of the cash that comes in the business back into the equipment, like I mentioned previously. So that is one of the main issues here is finance. And then obviously dealing with international companies, they've got extended payment terms, while the local market demands instant cash up front. So you deal with a supplier, they're expecting payment immediately, if not in the next 2 days. So that's what we find, yeah. The strengths are that it's, for the country itself, it's getting very stable. So for companies to be able to operate and they're working in a very stable environment. The weaknesses, again, fall back down to part of the cultural issues here. People are not used to working to international standards, especially with the oil companies. They have very high HSE requirements. And for some of the local firms, it's very difficult for them to be able to manage that. The threats themselves would, again, boil down to the political situation between the sort of central Iraqi government and the KRG government. So potentially maybe political threats and maybe embargoes between moving equipment. But apart from that, the business environment is very good in the KRG region. Ease of doing business here, I would say it's roughly 5, because there's a lot of old bureaucratic systems. So the technology is not here, so everything's done by paper. So you have to go through various departments. So for example, for clients, when we provide for what's called a tax exemption certificate, you have to keep the original documentation, you have to then go to the M&R to get the approval to bring the equipment in, then after that you have to then go to the Ministry of Finance. So sometimes it can be a convoluted process just to be able to move equipment into the country. But as the M&R gears up and gets more sort of systemised and processed and builds their teams, it should get easier and easier for companies, because obviously they want to make it easier for companies to be able to bring their equipment in, which will then help them get to production stages a lot quicker. It's very transparent because for a lot of the oil companies, the tenders, you have to go through a tendering process. So everything's documented. The oil companies have a strict requirement for tendering. And part of their sort of corporate governance. For the various acts that they have to follow, because these are international companies, so they've got a lot of regulations and corporate governance to their stakeholders in the various countries, US, United Kingdom. So in the M&R, they've made the process very transparent. When you go for a tender, you've got basically technical requirements you've got to meet, financial requirements. And as a company, we're very geared towards that. We're actually very transparent ourselves, that we're audited by PwC, like I mentioned previously, ISO certified. So we're being very transparent in our transactions, and the oil companies can see that themselves. For the oil and gas, they're very pro, they know they need to develop and exploit the resources that are in country. So they're making it easier for the companies, but it's quite a long process because they have to work in the existing Iraqi law framework. So the KRG is trying to work with that framework, but also make it a lot easier for the companies to be able to bring equipment in. So this is obviously a process, and a legal process and a parliamentary process that they have to go through to try and make the laws a lot more easier for these companies to be able to come into the country.